Eric Andre.
I set out to make the worst talk show of all time. That's what I wanted to do.
And you succeeded.
And I succeeded.
So
She is gorgeous.
How
I
is-
would make love to Barbara Bush. Let's do it on the show. Get Bush in here now. Get Barbara in here.
All right, this time I'm switching things up, and I've got an interview with Larry King and Eric Andre, who's a comedian, and he basically just entraps people on a fake talk show. And I want to just go through and go function by function and explain why I think he is a certain type. Okay, so I don't want to overcomplicate things here. I just want to go through each one and show examples. So let's go through the first function, or we can call it like the show-off function. So this is the function that is the easiest to notice. Something that somebody could do all day. It's the background for most of the things they're doing, and they can really show it off with ease. So in this case, the person is extroverted, intuition dominant, or at least that's what I'm thinking. I'm going to show a clip, but basically the guy's just really good at coming up with alternative ideas. His job is to entrap people and get them into really weird situations and situations that they otherwise wouldn't want to be in if they knew what the hell was going on. So basically, this is just the person showing off this quality.
Now, what is the point of that, Eric?
What is the point of anything? What is the point?
What's it all about?
What is it all about?
What does it mean?
What does it mean? Yeah, exactly.
So that should be the
Existence is meaningless. Or are we all connected?
Or are we here?
Or are we really here?
Are we?
Is this a dream that we're going to wake up from?
Is this all a dream?
I don't know. I don't know the answers, and that's what
this planet that we're spinning on.
What is it?
Where
it's just a little marble in the middle of a solar system that's on the outskirts of the Milky Way. Who is Donald Trump?
Does he exist?
Does he really exist?
I get where you're going.
Is he Barbara Bush with a mask on?
Could be.
Could be.
She always wanted it.
Okay, so moving on to the next function. Next function is basically like, you can think of it as like the no big deal function. And it's not the most obvious, but it's an area where someone acts like they don't care about something, but it's, it becomes apparent to you that they do. So it's basically like, it's an area where somebody wants to present themselves as if they're not focused on this thing as much as they really are. And in this case, Eric Andre is talking about how he wanted to make the worst talk show ever, but he actually wanted to make a very good show.
On Adult Swim, it's been referred to, Eric, as a Molotov cocktail of a talk show. Chaotic blend of whatever strange, violent, and disruptive sketches Adult Swim will let you produce. Why do you?
What does that mean?
Why do you do this? Why do you make one guest to walk off? Why do you have
I don't want them to
rodents
walk off.
jump out of you?
I set out to make the worst talk show of all time. That's what I wanted to do.
And you succeeded.
And I succeeded.
Next function is the 9 to 5 function. It's pretty obvious. It's something that somebody's constantly doing, so it can be overlooked in that way. So although it is obvious and it's something that you're gonna notice, you might even overlook it because it's happening, so constantly. And it seems like the person's doing it on autopilot. So, you can really take it for granted. You can see it looks like they take it for granted almost. And in the case of Eric Andre, it appears to me that it's subjective coherence or introverted thinking, which is basically just making sense to yourself. And you can see that when Larry King asks him about the details of his show, he's like, how do you keep track of all this stuff? Because he's constantly trying to trick people. So he's like, how do you make this work, basically? Like, this isn't something that's very straightforward, and it's not something that you would, you can't just open a book and read up on how to entrap people on a fake television show.
No, the guests aren't in on the pranks.
Well, once you've established a fame of some sort, they're going to know they're going to be pranked.
You know what? People don't do their research, and we kind of purposely book guests that we assume have never seen the show.
So if you had called me to be a guest...
You'd be a great guest.
I would be.
Well, you did research, so you wouldn't be as great.
Okay, so the 6th function is the function in which you're going to notice somebody uses to do their dirty work, so to speak. And it's not the most obvious one, but it's the one that somebody's going to use to make excuses for or to justify questionable behavior. In these clips, you're going to see just how much thought went into making this television show in which the comedian is purposely entrapping high-profile celebrities. So he's thought a lot of these things through very meticulously and in a very straightforward manner that enabled him to actually make the show. And we're going to take a look here. We're going to take a look at extroverted thinking.
For what purpose did you do this?
I came up with the idea for the show when I was working in New York City. I was temping. I was like 22, 23 years old, and I was doing stand-up comedy at night. And I had a temp job, and I was miserable. And I just thought, how funny would it be if there was a talk show where the talk show host, that was his temp job, and he brought like apathy and indifference to a talk show host position.
Were you a fan of talk shows?
I was a fan of like anti-talk shows. Like Martin Short does Jiminy Glick.
I did a Now with him.
Yeah, huge Jiminy Glick fan, and Tom Green show and stuff like that.
Tom Green's good too.
Yeah.
Where do you do it?
In North Hollywood. Well, we do the street stuff, so we do like hidden camera street pranks. We do that in New York, in Manhattan, and in Brooklyn, and then we interview the guests.
With a studio audience?
No, we don't do a studio audience. We do a fake studio audience.
I've heard sound.
Yeah, because we like canned laughter. I think that's better.
Okay, next up is the function where you're going to find people faking it until they make it. I got an Urban Dictionary definition here, and it says, definition of fake it till you make it is to act like you're something so you can, in fact, become that thing. So in other words, this is an area where a person is probably making an effort, but they don't totally understand what they're doing. And for Eric Andre, I would say this is extroverted feeling, which is basically just social awareness. So we're gonna see a clip of that here.
What does the producer tell the guest?
They're like, hey, it's a wacky talk show, just be yourself.
You'll have a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then
we just looked at the fake it till you make it function. Now we're looking at the flying in the dark function, and the fake it till you make it function is mostly the fake it till you make it function because people have no idea what they're doing in the flying in the dark function. And it's usually difficult to notice because it's hard to imagine that somebody could be so clueless in a certain area. So for Eric Andre, I would reason that it's emotional understanding and sensitivity. And you can see it in the clip, but it basically underlies the entire idea of his fake talk show.
Okay, you've known for making your guests uncomfortable, but yet they come. Jack Black, Stacey Dash, Kelly Osbourne.
They're fools,
other guests
Larry.
For this
They're
season.
Fools.
Well, Haley Joel Osment is coming. T.I. Howie Mandel is coming.
Yes.
Jillian Michaels, Chris Rock. Why do they come?
I don't know.
For the fourth function, we're talking about the virtue signaling / redeeming function. So this one's hard to see at first, and you'll notice that it's information that a person makes note of, and they talk about a lot, but they barely ever act on it. So you can tell that they're aware of something, but they're not acting on it. So that's why I call it virtue signaling. But if the person's actually spending time acting on something, it's where you're going to see some positive redeeming qualities. And for Eric Andre, I'd say that the virtue signaling function is introverted sensing, which is like your aesthetic sense. And I say this because he's virtue signaling about people walking off his show. So Larry King is like, how many people walked off your show? And he's like, well, only 2 people, or I can't remember what he said. Maybe he said 3. He's like, only a couple people walked off the show so far. And then he explains why they walked off the show. So he knows what is causing people to walk off the show, but he's not doing anything about it. And that's like basically part of his job, which is basically to ignore decorum or aesthetics. Period. That's basically his job, is to be aware of what is the correct thing to do aesthetically and then ignore that.
We've only had 2 walk-offs.
Who walked off?
We had Lauren Conrad walk off, and we had T.I. walk off.
And what were you doing at the time?
T.I., there was a lot of male nudity in his interview. Lauren Conrad, I vomited on the desk.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Why?
Just really lowbrow.
Last function is the function that makes people look bad and really undermines people. So it's not something that you normally see evidence of for celebrities. Like if you go on YouTube and you Google, I don't know, like Chris Hemsworth or whatever, any popular celebrity, if you Google them and you look at interviews, it's very hard to find this and to type somebody correctly because they're always trying to, look their best. And it's the area that, behind the scenes, I would assume is something that's edited out a lot in TV and movies and celebrity interviews and all this stuff. I'd assume this is the type of stuff that is edited out. But it's great because Eric Andre makes a living off of this stuff, so you can really see it. And it's basically the area where people rarely make a good impression, but they're going to make an effort anyway. And if they're not even trying, it's really, you know, it really makes a name for itself as what I would call the yikes function, because it's just something that, like, whenever you see it, you're like, oof, that was bad. Or like you look at it and you're like, what the hell was that? You know, and for Eric Andre, we get the rare opportunity of seeing a celebrity showing this. You can find this with other celebrities, and I'll probably show this later. If you Google celebrity freakouts or you type that into YouTube, you can usually find something like this. But again, we don't have to do that for Eric Andre, because he basically makes a living off of being crazy and showing an unflattering side of himself. And for Eric Andre, it's extroverted sensing would be his yikes function. Basically anything that is a concrete sense perception. So something that you notice with, you know, the five senses. For somebody that is of this type, that's a yikes. It's a yikes function.
Kimmel, we had a PA under his seat tickling his taint the entire interview. The taint is the perineum. When someone's tickling your taint, you know, it's a rush. As she was talking to him, I had a little cup of oatmeal. So I put it in my mouth, and I came back up, and then when she turned back at me, I went, "Bah!" She is gorgeous. I would make love to Barbara Bush. Let's do it on the show. Get Bush in here now. Get Barbara in here.